Hello, my name is Diane Shrivastava, and I'm pleased to tell you what the Living Data Project has been doing in terms of rescuing the past to prepare for the future. So the world is changing around us, and data that's been collected in the past is often essential to understanding this rate of change. For example, cod stalks on the Scotian shelf. It's only by going back to the 1850s and looking at ship logs have scientists been able to reconstruct how many fish this area used to support and how many it could potentially in the future. This puts into context the small percentage of this carrying capacity that still exists. In terms of when plants first flower, it's only going back more than 100 years to records collected by Nova Scotian school children about when they first observed certain plants flowering, that we can see that plants today are flowering almost a week earlier than they were a century ago. In terms of Pacific salmon stocks, it's only by discovery of boxes of salmon scales and the subsequent genetic analysis that we've been able to formulate population models for some of these species. And finally, one of the most famous data rescue stories in Canadian ecology concerns the snowshoe hare and its predator, the Arctic lynx. By reconstructing records from the Hudson Bay Company, the cycles in these two populations became apparent, leading to new ways of thinking about population dynamics. Of course, it is these very historical data that are so important that are still the ones that are most at risk of loss. Some estimates in other areas of biology suggest that biological data dies at a rate of about 17% per year. That means that a data set that was collected 12 years ago only has about a 10% chance of surviving. The reasons why we lose data are varied. It could be due to hardware failure, proprietary software, defunct storage media, incomplete metadata, and of course, policy changes. No matter what the reason for data loss, there is a clear need for data rescue. This is where the Living Data Project comes in, an initiative of the Canadian Institute of Ecology and Evolution. So there's three main activities of the Living Data Project. First, we train graduate students across Canada in reproducible research, data management, synthesis science, science collaboration. Over the last 5 years, we've trained more than 250 such graduate students. Once we've trained the students, then some of them will choose to do data rescue internships with us. We have hosted 93 different internships over this period, working with academics, government scientists, NGOs, and so on. And once the data is open, then we can run working groups to analyze this data and to search for changes over time in space. So the first step of data rescue is identifying what data we want to rescue, because of course there's far too much data. But here we think about which data is at high value, either scientifically, culturally, economically, and therefore irreplaceable, and which data is most at risk. And we go for that area in this graph, indicate with the number 1, high value, high risk, which forms the top of our pipeline. The next step is to put together a team of, including the graduate student, a postdoc and a faculty member to mentor them through the process, the data collector themselves, and if we need to have data entry as a part of this project, we would include undergraduates. So from that point, it's a matter of identifying and documenting the metadata, transferring, compiling the data itself, cleaning and validating that data, getting it archived in a permanent open repository ready for sharing. There's more details of this in this publication. Okay, so over the last 5 years, these internships have collectively rescued over 2,000 years of data, covering multiple different taxa and systems. This data rescue has been very beneficial. First of all, it's allowed us to detect environmental change over time. This is when we've got longitudinal data. So for example, a data set on 167 years of change in when the ice on lakes forms and melts has been instrumental here. When data was collected in the past, it gives us the opportunity to resurvey. So it creates historical baselines, such as urban birds and plant communities collected in the 1970s. We can also combine historical data with contemporary data in interesting ways. So here's a project where we rescued data on the pesticide spray history of the province of New Brunswick. We could then merge this historical data with contemporary data on the stream insects that occur in this area to look for legacy effects of the pesticides. We can also do new analyses of classic studies. So evolution has been really influenced by studies of Darwin's finches and freshwater sticklebacks. Ecology theory has really been influenced by population studies of Serengeti ungulates. By rescuing this data, we have the opportunity to do new analyses with computational and statistical techniques that were not available at the time to yield new insights. We can also think about generating metrics that have broad spatial and temporal coverage when we start rescuing the data that allows that type of coverage. And here we've been working with organizations that are interested in two metrics, that are producing two metrics. The Watershed Reports documents the state of Canadian freshwaters, and the Living Planet Index documents change in vertebrate populations. We also work with non-scientists, so local organizations, and here we can help them archive their data. In this case, it's water quality data on DataStream, which enables them to compare their data to national standards. We can work with groups that have multiple disparate data sets. So here we're working with different Canadian government agencies who've all conducted research in the Tricky Lakes watershed, but collected different types of data. By building a relational database, we've enabled them to have cross-sectional analyses that involve limnology, phytoplankton, invertebrates, and fish. And finally, we can use these data sets that we have rescued for open access teaching resources. And here we've got a project called the Living Data Tutorials that showcases this approach. So in all of this, we have learned different techniques to make projects a success, to stop scope creep, to involve data collectors throughout the project, to champion projects until that very final stage that the DOI is minted, and to manage adaptively. I'll encourage you to read our extended abstract to learn more about these insights. Thank you.